Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, and now, powered by this rage-fueled ring, legally distinct, let's get that clear, I am taking issue with the final chapter in Batman Eternal. What started out as a mere subway crash has engulfed the city in flames. The mastermind? Cluemaster, the last man Batman would have expected. And now, as the Dark Knight stands unmasked, chained to his broken bat symbol, and worn down after constant fighting and no sleep, Cluemaster is about to take his final revenge. Until he gets his throat cut. By whom? His benefactor, of course.
The double-sized issue is scripted by James Tynion IV, and we take a look many months in the past as a radio newscast mentions 17 city officials have been found dead in their homes, and reports of assassins with owl insignia. Arthur Brown is getting out of his car, on his phone telling Stephanie there's nothing to be afraid of, as she seems worried about potential perverts. He tells her to stay inside and lock the doors, and she asks if Batman will save them, like he saved Artie at some point. Maybe that's a reference to when Steph was much younger and walked in on bats confronting Cluemaster in his home, but it's not made certain. Papa Brown assures her that, sure, bats will save the day, and ends the call, lamenting his own child praising his enemy. He motivates himself, saying that while others like the Riddler laughed him off, Brown had unraveled Gotham's biggest mystery, and he was going to finally garner what he needed to bring down the Batman. He stands outside Harbor House on the night of the Owls, just past midnight, and walks in, bellowing to the potential occupants. Ascending the domicile, he proclaims that it'd taken him 2 years to follow the clues, and is fine with them not wanting people to know they exist, but has a plan for their pest problem against the bat that made them forget all about Cluemaster.
Batman has amnesia powers? Or is it that he's punched so many people in the head in such a precise way that only memories involving this one obscure villain are affected?
Arthur finally reaches the meeting hall for the court, only to find everyone at the table dead. Wow, anyone who says they remember the Court of Owls party clearly wasn't there. He's disappointed with the loss of money and resources and what could have been, only for someone else to chime in, interested in what he has to say. It's here that he meets Lincoln March, looking an awful lot like Bizarro Bruce Wayne, saying he had a disagreement with his business associates, but the upside is that all their money is now his to access. Though intimidated at first, Arthur then tells him his plan starts with some invitations.
I'm sure their disagreements on calligraphy were the stuff of villainous legend.
We jump to the present where things are not exactly how we left them. For one thing, Cluemaster's mask is back on his face, even though it was cracked, broken, and removed last time. Additionally, it makes it seem as if March killed him with his gauntlet blades, with the blood dripping from them, but he used a dagger to cut Cluemaster's throat. Oh well, I guess. Owlface says that Brown was smarter than most gave him credit for, but obviously not smart enough. His plan was predicated on Bruce never expecting him being the brains, while he also expected his victory over Batman to make him a top-tier villain, thus missing the point of his own scheme. A fair criticism. Arthur, would you like to respond? Oh, right. Now it's Lincoln's turn to hurt Batman, and he jets him away from Beacon Tower.
Hey look, there's a part of Gotham that's not on fire!
March says that since he has no identity of his own anymore, and not coming up with a code name or having an entourage, he knows he's nobody, thanks to his supposed brother, and he's going to reciprocate. Bruce decides it's his stop, so takes one of the lengthier glass shards from the bat signal lodged in his back and stabs March's jetpack. They fly out of control and crash into a giant TV screen in the Gotham equivalent of Times Square.
I guess it's true what they say. Pull one glass shard from your back, get 37 more shards in your back. What? I'm sure someone says it.
Alfred tries calling Batman to no avail, and his other allies have their hands full. Batwing has cleared a block of Mahoney Place, but the fires are spreading. Bluebird is headed for the Narrows, where Red Robin is handling riots, and Red Hood is trapped under rubble in a collapsing building, saying he wants to record a message for Bruce. Batgirl motorcycles frantically. No, 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 no! Go faster! I'm sure it's because Topper's Pizza is closing in 10 minutes. Atop her nightclub, Catwoman gazes at the burning city below, asked by Killer Croc what they should do, but she doesn't know. Bearing my cleavage to the fires isn't working! Meanwhile, Gordon is psyching himself up for his plan, which he hopes works. Bullock tells him the men are finishing the paint jobs, and Gordon wants them back on the street, as he can handle things from his position, radioing for someone to punch him in. What, like the face? The stomach? Whatever. Back at the main event, March calls for his brother, a relationship Bruce denies as he fashions himself a new mask from some fabric. Somewhere. Not a lot of detail for context. Lincoln says this is the perfect place for him to die, recalling when Batman first appeared before Gotham in 0 Year, facing Nigma projected on a big screen. Like a knight slaying a dragon, a bedtime story that is nearing its end. As their fight resumes, Lincoln displays enough strength to bend a sign pole, and the villain goes on that people will find Bruce's body, neck snapped, because March is apparently a fan of the recent DC movies, and unlike Cluemaster, who'd take the credit, the Owl Guy is more than happy to remain unknown. Tired, Batman tries fighting back however he can, even using a dislodged car door as a weapon, but is swiftly repelled. By the time Gotham's fires go out, March will be long gone, and people will find a dead man whose symbol meant nothing. As he begins choking the life out of Bats, March remarks that without his money or company, both the names Batman and Wayne will fade away, ending his legacy. Bruce isn't so sure, as the functioning screens around them display a bat emblem centered on a yellow backdrop.
No, I didn't take the Lego Batman movie into account! My plans are ruined!
Jim Gordon speaks to all of Gotham on every street corner, due to those emergency broadcast speakers mentioned last issue. He says he knows people are frightened, maybe more than ever, and may be pushed to do things they wouldn't normally do. However, as much as the city can take, as much as it tests them, they need to stand up and rally behind a symbol of what they're capable of. At Bullock's signal, numerous bat symbols decorate the smoky sky on one of the rarely appropriate splash pages. Tonight requires more than one hero, Gordon says. It requires a whole city of them. He calls on people to do for one night what is done for them every night. It's kind of a twist on Jason Bard's speech from issue 26 when he announced martial law, where he said Gotham citizens had to rely on themselves. But instead of saying Batman was incapable, the message is more inclusive and uplifting than intimidating. Tonight, we all need to be Batman.
Everyone is Batman. Punch a crook and save someone's life. Everyone is Batman, if just for one night.
The night sky full of bat emblems has given Spoiler pause from escaping the city in cowardice. We see a car barreling towards a nearby citizen.
Wait, let me guess. Stephanie remembers how perfect and wonderful Bluebird is and wants to be a hero just like her, so she goes back to saving people, right? Or does she leave Gotham and then lament how horrible she is and how she wishes she could be more like Harper Row?
But in the next panel, it looks like headlights are shining on Stephanie, indicating she's about to be struck. Kinda weird. A citizen tackles her out of the way, assuming she's one of the crime fighters that's done so much already. To Spoiler's astonished gaze, he's accepting the call given by the commissioner. Didn't the mayor say that the people of Gotham reviled Gordon because they still thought his negligence killed a bunch of people? Yet here they are listening to him to save the city? I don't know, just one of the things they never cleaned up, I guess. This is the only example we actually see of anyone listening to Gordon, so we just have to assume that this one dude saving Spoiler represents the whole of Gotham taking positive action. Because why show something to that degree and be, as uplifting as it's trying to be? Moving on, Red Hood is still trapped under rubble until Batgirl crashes through, knocking the rubble off him, thus saving the inanimate building material from continued contact from Jason Todd, even though you'd think that would just weaken the structural integrity. She's a true hero. Never took you as much of a damsel in distress, Jason.
Huh. That's funny, because I always took you as the knight in shining armor.
After that forced and nauseating bit of dialogue, Babs's motorcycle is crushed, and we get forced and nauseating hints at shipping. Jason,
Me too, Babs. Me too.
That's when Talon, former member of the Court of Owls and one of many characters to get a solo ongoing that was swiftly cancelled in the New 52, grabs Barbara, and I assume Jason by accident, telling someone named Casey to blow the wall. He gets them out in time and says that the lady in the cave put out a call to every network in the city, and we see Batwoman impress Bluebird because reasons, Black Canary fight fire with Sonics, and Katana take out some jewelry thieves. 5 officers are trapped inside a burning building, but are saved by Waylon Jones, and Maggie Sawyer is quick to draw her gun. Selina Kyle suddenly appearing behind Jason Bard, who addresses her with some familiarity as if they've met, but we haven't seen them meet in this series, says that there's a lie about mobsters protecting each other and the city over greed, but it's really about honor. Her 300 people are out there helping, so Bard orders Sawyer to stand down. They still have a city to save.
Afterwards, we'll have a big mobster/cop pizza party. Then we'll arrest them.
Gothamites following Gordon's words stuns March, but not as much as Bruce's headbutt to his owl mask, leaving it in pieces. Knocking Batman down, he prepares to end it all, only to be interrupted with a paint can to the head.
Who?
Come on, don't you recognize me? I'm Batman.
I don't know how to feel right now.
Admittedly, it's a very cool shot. Stephanie Brown defending Batman against the big bad, returning to the fight, and it, so far, having nothing to do with worshipping Bluebird. Hopefully that much doesn't change, but we still have another 16 or so pages left to go. March says he should have killed her back in her dad's kitchen, and she agrees, which hints at a certain level of familiarity between the two, like she acknowledges this was the guy working with Cluemaster, but again, just like with the Bard Kyle thing, it's not clarified. Too bad for the wannabe Wayne, he faces an additional 10 Bat allies displayed on 2-page spread. Gordon trains his sidearm on the villain, promising not to miss a shot like months back. Bats calls him Lincoln, aloud, telling him it's over. Overwhelmed, March creates a smokescreen, escaping beneath the city as Red Robin insists they'll follow him to scour the tunnels, promising Batman they won't let him get away. Despite his fatigue, injuries, and lack of an actual suit, Bats is determined to join the pursuit, but Gordon turns his attention skyward, assuring him that one way or another, Batman will save the city like always.
Maybe they could do this one night every year, a kind of Batman Day where people fight crime, or just go out and buy overpriced Bat merchandise. Bruce has got to rebuild that fortune somehow.
It's a week later, and Jason Bard arrives for an appointment he set up with the recently promoted Vicky Vale. She mentions that people are calling him a hero again for getting Gordon out of prison, and for the coordination we never saw of the police and fire departments. Bard admits he isn't a hero, to Vale's agreement. She's on draft 17 of an article on everything Bard was involved in, saying he won't escape with a last-minute change of heart. However, he's already been replaced as commissioner with Maggie Sawyer, and offers Vicky an 18th draft of her exposé, corroborating her information. She agrees to listen while at a nearby bar where he'll be buying, and says he'll never work in law enforcement again. He jokes that there's always work for an ex-cop in Gotham, like with the Penguin. It's a joke that falls flat. Hey, he's still funnier than Sarah Silverman. A bat signal shines from the Egyptian nightclub, and Batman is quick to dismantle it. He's stopped by an Egyptian-clothed croc, whom Bats thinks looks dumber than usual.
Really, Batman? You're going to criticize someone else for how they dressed? What's next? You're going to dispense some yo mama jokes? Maybe give him a wet willy?
Selina calls Croc off, citing she never got the symbol right anyway. A week later and her look at my cleavage wear is already back in rotation. She has other clothes, right? Bat says he used to look the other way for Selina because he believed there was good inside her, but now whatever they were is over. Kyle says it's cute that he thinks he ended things, noting she saved hundreds of lives in this war and he didn't even notice. Penguin, now working for Selina, tells her a business appointment awaits her, with Batman noting that the businesses she allegedly saved are missing things. She brushes him off as he leaves, saying she must have been looking the other way. Oh, snap, I guess. At the Arkham disaster site, Jim Corrigan is with Batwing, saying the place is full of ghosts. Wing recalls when Bats brought him in to see a world beyond the rational, stuff he wouldn't accept. Corrigan says that it was Spectre that took Luke as far as he did, and presumes he has nightmares and is unsure if he should pretend it never happened or run to the nearest church. After using a sigil to banish a ghost that was possessing a fragment of brick wall, he suggests Batwing accept what has happened while asking him to follow along. Because hell opened in the area, things will be getting weirder for a while, telling Luke he adapted to it faster than anyone he's seen and found a way to fight back. Corrigan is putting together a special task force with the GCPD called the Midnight Shift to deal with supernatural problems, and offers Luke a place on the team. Batwing says he'll think about it, and thanks Corrigan before taking off. Jim Gordon is back home, saying he doesn't need to be taken care of, but after so long in prison, Barbara is going to pamper him or die trying. She suggests her dad never lost his cool, but says she came awful close before a friend reminded her that she can use her passion as fuel to do the right thing, even when the wrong thing is easier. As Jim wonders who taught her that lesson, we cut to Jason Todd at a bar, trying to leave a message for Barbara that he thinks there may be something between them, something neither expected. Something not really well developed, but when has that stopped shippers? He continues that Barb being incredible makes him want to be a better friend and ally, and that maybe... Screw it, he erases the message. Jason, you idiot. Finally, Red Hood and I agree on something.
Don't feel too bad, Jason. She wouldn't go out with you. She has standards.
He exits the bar, calling Roy Harper to pick him up, and telling him to be quiet when he asks if he made the call. In the Row apartment in the Narrows, it's all fun and games as Stephanie tries to wrestle her mask back from Cullen. Harper retires to her room, where Red Robin sneaks up on her, and threatened by one of 20 tasering weapons within her reach. Harper mentions how Steph is settling in, like trying to institute a chore wheel, but more to the point, she hasn't talked about having to identify her father's body at the morgue. And also her mom skipped town.
You remember Crystal Brown, who seemed to at first collude with Cluemaster, and then hired an assassin to find her daughter, and then said she'd never let her daughter out of her sight again. She just left. No explanation. Because, what, Steph is better off this way?
Harper remarks how Steph lost everything, but came back to fight when she didn't have to, and that there's something about her. Honestly, this last-minute praise from an overpraised character to another character made to feel third fiddle, it falls pretty flat. Feels more like a tease to readers who already know about Stephanie Brown that big things are coming, but if this series is any indication, those impending events probably won't be very well done. I mean, Harper was bragging about her accomplishments to shame Stephanie for wanting to leave in the last issue. Now she's suddenly marveling at her return. Moving on, Red Robin remarks Harper also stood up and has a family when she needs it, and they hug until interrupted by Stephanie, snarking about this being the room where she hides the Bat Kids. Harper introduces Red Rob and quietly threatens violence if her new roommate doesn't learn to knock. Steph and Double R share a look to further tease fans, but this time about the relationship they had pre-Flashpoint and how it might be a possibility now, so that should make you forget about how terribly and needlessly both characters were reinvented. Also, when the relationship does happen, you should ignore how rushed and ridiculous it too shall be. The look doesn't go unnoticed by Harper, and an embarrassed Tim tries to make an exit with some dignity. Little does he know, dignity isn't allowed in the New 52. Steph asks if they found her dad's killer, but all they found were pieces of his armor. Someone else got to him first. Nestled somewhere in Gotham, Bruce Zorro awakes to find more owl-masked members of the court, scolding him for the death of their leaders, theft of their money, taking their resurrection formula, and trying to destroy their nest. Strapped to a sarcophagus and nodules sticking into his chest, he's frozen and sealed, allegedly for the next decade.
And when he emerges, he will seek revenge on the Court of Owls for letting him get freezer burn.
Overlooking Gotham from a rooftop, not Commissioner James Gordon muses how every time a wound in Gotham closes, something makes it rip open again. But maybe it's that difficulty that makes them better, and it's why he loves the city. Can't help but feel we've heard this speech a few times already. Anyway, Batman wonders how some of his allies will recover from this past year, and Jim says that hard times are what they signed up for. But it's time to get down to business. Bats isn't the only one with a police scanner, and they both know Scarecrow is using his newest toxin downtown. The comic, and the maxi series, ends with Batman asking his old friend if he's up for one more fight, and Gordon asks, "Why don't we find out?"
And that, patient viewer, is Batman Eternal. Overall, I would say it has a lot of good concepts, some subtle cleverness here and there, and a few elements that aren't so bad. But it does get bogged down with a lot of problems, some bigger than others, but still a lot. These problems become more apparent if you read one issue after another, rather than, say, read this issue and then read an issue of another comic, then read the next issue of Eternal, and so on. When I reread this book for this review, the issues, no pun intended, became very, very obvious.
The idea of a plot against Batman to wear him down and beat him has been done before by Bane, but it's by no means a bad idea, and is kind of freshened up with a twist of it being perpetrated by a lesser-known villain. There is some clever foreshadowing, like in issue 8 when Forbes makes a crack about the commissioner's office door ever reading Bard's name instead of his. On a more encompassing scale, there were a lot of subtle hints aimed at the Court of Owls, from Batman being told that Falcone was informed how the Dark Knight would act, and he asks who, while a figure from the shadows watches on. Then there's the cover of issue 39 with an owl in plain sight, and Bat's musing about the significance of a bird appearing in a dream that acted as an instruction manual for Professor Milo to cause magical chaos in Arkham. What's more, several of the subplots seem to have similar themes of fathers and daughters. Most of the time they start off adversarial, like Catwoman to her father Rex Calabrese, Julia to Alfred, and Arthur Brown to Stephanie. But in Selina and Julia's cases, they eventually not only grow to accept their fathers, but grow into the same roles they've had, even coming to mutual respect and understanding. Though in Cluemaster's case, his turn was more sudden. He claims Stephanie figured things out, though we never saw how, and only then saw her potential worth. Though their relationship remained adversarial up to his death. Though I've already made mention of the whole daddy issues things, which really doesn't shine a positive light on this theme. In Barbara Gordon's case, we saw her go to extremes to try and prove her father's innocence, to defend him, and that also works into the theme I'm suggesting, though in a much different way. Joker's daughter could work into the theme, but she's not really, Joker's daughter, and Joker doesn't actually make an appearance here, so it's not really something I would count. That, and the whole theme of fathers and daughters, seems more incidental or coincidental than anything that plays too strongly into the overall story. It's there, but it's not quite what the story's about.
And while those elements are indeed good, especially in concept, when they're executed with such problematic elements, it really bogs the whole story down.
It doesn't help when they show off characters like Rory, Batwing's roommate, or Mr. Bone, or Roadrunner, and we're kind of just expected to know who these characters are. I get the feeling like they showed up in other titles I wasn't collecting, but I shouldn't have to go and collect those titles to understand their significance in this story. Captions for both describing characters and their relationships and for whatever issue of whatever comic is being referenced would have really helped. I've been collecting for about 20 years, so I can't imagine how confused and lost someone who is newer to comics that came on board with the New 52 might feel here. Some things are minor and could be overlooked under normal circumstances, like how Stephanie got into her dad's locked house, or some characters, even Batman, announcing dialogue awkwardly when a caption would have worked much better. The book also lends itself to certain redundancies, like Carmine Falcone having a grudge against Catwoman, and some guy named Mr. Bone having a grudge against Catwoman. You could have just taken one of those guys out, probably Mr. Bone, and just made it feel more concise. And several characters who spend their time playing dress-up in silly costumes mock other people in silly costumes for playing dress-up. Any cleverness or wit contained in mocking someone dressed up like a bat is kind of taken away when you dress up like a different animal or just cover your face in bandages for no reason. I don't know, maybe they thought they were being clever through self-deprecation or something, but it didn't really work. Then you have several instances of characters being straight up bipolar. Batman says ghosts are real, so is the paranormal, and the supernatural is just something you have to accept despite your rational mind saying otherwise. Then he mocks Croc for suggesting hell exists. One minute, Crystal Brown is clearly conspiring with her ex-husband and noting how Stephanie could ruin both their plans, and then the next minute she's all, I want to protect my daughter, and then she up and leaves. No explanation whatsoever, she just up and leaves her with a couple of strangers. Speaking of, one minute Harper Row wants to pummel Stephanie, the next minute, for absolutely no reason with no build-up, she's thinking she's cool. And on that note, because of the disingenuous nature of Harper's remark, it doesn't feel like they've actually bonded. It feels more like she's Eric Cartman from the South Park episode Breast Cancer Show Ever, where he was fake crying and pretending he wanted to be friends with a very girl he was intentionally antagonizing. Yeah, Harper Row is Cartman in this situation.
Now, you look here are some questions this book raises that it should have answered. It had 52 issues to cover its ground, but these questions linger. And some of them, yes, you could say are small, but others are much bigger, caused by poor planning or just having too many writers on the project. I mean, did they expect these things to be answered by other writers on other titles? If so, that's kind of sloppy. It makes me wonder, if there was an editor on this book, how present was he? Was he sick the entire time?
As a friend of mine has said, no one intends to write a bad story, but there's so much in here that could have been improved by taking a lot of things out. There are times when the story isn't confusing, it's confused. And I swear, there's so much hand-waving, I'm pretty sure it qualifies as a cry for help. We've got characters that kind of show up and then disappear with very little explanation or context. You have events being talked about when they should have been shown, like the majority of the stuff Stephanie had done, like spying on her dad's friends and beating some assassins, as well as the clues Cluemaster apparently left, indicating he was the mastermind, Harper's training, alleged riots at Arkham, even though they were playing it up like everything was normal, Jason Bard being overly critical of Gordon, the prisoners thinking Gordon is innocent. The list goes on. The magic subplot didn't really add much. Sure, it was to distract and overwhelm Batman, but it just made the series seem even longer. And that's probably because, hey, it's Batman's 75th anniversary, let's make it 52 issues long, because some people at DC Comics have an unhealthy fixation on the number 52. And speaking of unhealthy fixations, Harper Row. This is a character that was introduced a couple of years ago, but here in this story, her development gets fast-forwarded. She's instantly made a better character as a hacker or a tech-savvy teenager or a crime fighter or a humanitarian than established characters with those skills already. She gets talked about how great she is more than we actually see her really doing anything. It's a lot of hype for very little activity. She doesn't really offer anything new or unique to Batman's allies, other than maybe her hair. It happened a little bit with Stephanie being a suburban girl who can somehow take out assassins off-panel and swing through the city, but all of that came to a pause when she encountered Harper Row, because she, for some reason, had to take center stage. It really feels like the people behind this book had more love for Harper Row, for whatever reason, than any other character. And this wouldn't be so annoying if those other characters, like Stephanie and like Tim, etc., weren't made to look so incompetent and incapable by comparison. Again, it is not a good way to develop one character by tearing down other perfectly good characters.
I wouldn't exactly call it essential Batman reading, even for all its positives. If you're a big Batman fan and you're curious, I would say pick up the issues or the trades at a convention on the cheap. If you're a fan of Tim Drake or Stephanie Brown, they're not done much justice here. It clearly shows a preference for Harper Row, but not enough preference to actually grow or develop her in an organic fashion. But for all my problems with this book, it didn't turn out quite the way I thought, so maybe I don't really need this ring. On the other hand,
Were there any errors I missed? Feel free to leave a comment.
Hello, me am Bruce Zorro #1.